Okay, here are the sides of a DN ice boat. Not very far along, but far enough along to be selective about what we're using. On the right side we have a piece of basswood that's been resawn, so the two pieces are book matched. On the other side we have a piece of 50-year-old redwood, also resawn, so the same scenario exists there. Additionally, as we walk down here, you'll notice that there's some grain run out in the redwood in particular, and we'll deal with that in the next little set of shots. Okay, so here we have our piece of redwood, two pieces rather, and as you can see, they are not exactly straight. There is definitely a crown to this piece of wood. You see how the center is touching, but the two ends are not. And this indicates basically that this has grown to some extent in a manner that would suggest that we want to put the crown of this wood facing up when we lay out our sides. In other words, the two touching pieces would be the highest point in the boat, in the interest of having the boat to deal with the grain in the strongest. Here we have a piece of steel, ostensibly straight one, that is now lying basically at the direction of the straightest point of the grain in this piece of wood, the redwood. And that being the case, that is what we would like to use for the bottom of the hull, because it will represent the strongest use of this piece of wood. Amazingly enough, a angle off from straight of even up to 7 or 8 degrees results in a 15 to 20% loss of strength in the piece of wood. So we want to lie out our side patterns so that the bottom lies parallel with this piece of steel. Here we have our pattern for the side of a DN, in this case, made or drawn and cut out of a piece of light gauge aluminum coil stock sheet metal. A great way to store these things and let them hang around for a while without taking up half your shop. As you can see by the piece of steel lying next to it, we have tried to orient this in such a way as to take advantage of this grain run out. We've tried to do this as effectively as possible, keeping the pattern within the confines of the size of our board. It's not perfect, but it's probably the best use of the material. Redwood is a material that has a very distinct grain, lightweight, reasonably strong. Pretty easy to lay this pattern down so it's lying in line with this grain. Basswood, on the other hand, is a far more or less figured, if you will, kind of material, and as such it takes a little finagling to try to figure out what the grain line is. Here you can kind of see on this piece of steel, if we move it out of the way, that all these grains have a point, and if we lay the steel about in the middle of the point and then proceed down along the board and see if we can find any more of these points, and here are some at the other end of the board. We basically lay it down the middle of the points, and roughly speaking, this is the center of grain growth for the tree. This is the back side, if you will, the other side of the pieces of wood that we had. Basically, we're going to make a laminate here. Each one of these pieces, now that it's been resawn and planed, is 5/16 thick. That barely gives us our 5/8 that we need for our minimum hull side thickness. Because we're vain and it's a beautiful thing, and we're going to make a boat out of wood, we want to use the nicest looking pieces. So these sides are the sides that need to face each other on our laminate. One of redwood facing a side of basswood. The basswood, basically this side of the cut is not as nice, more irregular. Same deal with the redwood. So these are the sides that we want to make sure when we lay out our pieces that these are the two faces that are going to be the faces accepting the glue and forming the laminate center, so that we have the nice looking pieces facing out. So roughly then, this is what our hull sides are going to be made out of, and they're located pretty much in the positions that we're going to use them in. We've got the good side on the outside. We have the crown facing up, and we have a nice matched pair of sides that ought to exhibit even load carrying capacity, not to mention being pretty nice looking. All we have to do now, lay out our patterns, lay out our strong back, and begin.